We sat silently side by side, the smell of disinfectant in the hospital mixing with the faint scent of her perfumed dad. Has always hoped I'd marry someone from the same social class, she suddenly said. He still doesn't understand why I chose you. My heart tightened. Yeah, why? She turned to look at me, something flickering in her eyes, but in the end she just shook her head. Go to sleep. We have a board meeting tomorrow. That was the closest we ever got to truly connecting, like a match struck in the dark, flickering briefly before vanishing. In the spring of the 7th year, Leon secured the company's biggest overseas project at the celebratory banquet. She drank more than usual. As I helped her back home, she leaned against me, her breath sweet with the scent of red wine tao. She murmured my name faintly. My heart raced. Tomorrow. Remind me to check the quarterly report. I smiled bitterly as I helped her into bed, even in a drunken stupor. Her mind was still occupied with work. As I covered her with a blanket, my hand accidentally brushed her cheek unconsciously. She nuzzled my palm like a coquettish scat. The intimacy of the moment made my chest ache. Only in times like this could I briefly possess her. The next morning, she had returned to her usual self, dressed in a neat suit, sitting at the dining table, reviewing reports, as if the vulnerability from the night before had never existed. Good morning, she said, not even looking up. The coffee is in the pot. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat across from her. The sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden halo around her. 7 years had passed and she was still so beautiful, painfully beautiful. Jan, I gathered my courage to speak. Her phone rang suddenly. After answering, she quickly stood up. The client from Singapore arrived early. I need to go to the office. As she reached the door, she glanced back at me. What were you going to say just now? I shook my head. Nothing. Hope work goes smoothly. The sound of the door closing echoed in the empty apartment, sharp and jarring. I looked at her unfinished coffee on the table and suddenly realized our marriage was like that cold cup of coffee, calm on the surface, but already cold inside. The first time I met Leon's family was 3 months after we got married. It was her father's 60th birthday, and they held a banquet at the Liu family's old house that morning. Leon threw me an exquisite gift box. Put this on, she said briefly. 600 tonight. Don't be late. Inside the box was an expensive custom-made suit, the fabric soft as water to the touch. As I stood in front of the mirror tying my tie, Jan walked over and furrowed her brows, adjusting it slightly. The about eyes to loose, she said, her fingers brushing over my Adam's apple, sending a subtle shiver through me. Remember, no matter what you hear tonight, keep smiling. The Liu family's old house was perched on a mountain at the edge of the city, a 3-story villa blending Chinese and Western styles. When we entered, the butler's scrutinizing gaze made me feel uncomfortable. The hall was filled with well-dressed figures, politicians and business magnates. Leon linked her arm with mine, her face adorned with a perfect smile, but her body was stiff like a wooden board. Leon, this is your husband. The age-old woman approached, her gaze scanning me from head to toe like in crescent. Leon nodded. This is Tao. Oh, the little clerk. The woman's red lips curled into a mocking smile. I heard your parents are teachers. I gripped my wine glass idly. Yes. They teach at a high school in a county town. Really? So simple. She dragged out the words and turned to Leon. Your father is so mad. His blood pressure's up. Do you know that? Leon remained unfazed. Excuse us. We need to go wish my father a happy birthday. After leaving the crowd, she whispered, Don't mind it. I'm not. I tugged at my tie. I should have worn my own clothes. She glanced at me. That suit was a charity auction gift, with the tag still on. I froze. I hadn't expected her to notice such a detail. Mr. Yu, her father, sat at the head of the table. His silver-gray hair was neatly combed, his gaze sharp as an eagle's. Even sitting down, his tall frame was apparently honest. Brows and eyes resembled his. About 70. Dad, Leon stepped forward. Wishing you health as vast as the East Sea and a life as long as the South Mountain, the old man grunted. his gaze landing on me. This is the person you chose. I took a step forward, respectfully handing him a gift. Uncle, happy birthday. This is a small token from Lien and me uncle. The old man sneered. You. We been married and you still call me uncle? A few quiet laughs echoed around us. My ears burned. Dad, happy birthday. You didn't take the gift. Instead, turning to Lian, the Wang family's son, returned from Wall Street yesterday. You should meet him. Leon's face remained expressionless. I'm already married. Is that what you call marriage? The old man raised his voice. It wasn't even a wedding. How do we know you two are truly married? I could feel sweat gathering in my palms. Indeed. Our marriage seemed more like a business transaction, one that didn't even include a wedding. Dad. Leon's voice was as cold as ice. If you don't welcome us, we'll leave now. The old man slammed the table. Presumptuous. The banquet hall fell silent instantly. All eyes were on us like prisoners under a spotlight. Uncle, you. Don't be angry. A young man in a dark blue suit approached. Leon was just confused for a moment. His intimate address made my stomach churn. This must be the Wang family's young master. A Harvard graduate whose family was in real estate. A perfect match for the Liu family, Mr. Tang. Right? He turned to me and extended his hand. I've heard much about you. I hear you work as an assistant at Lianhua Group. I shook his hand. Yes, I'm in charge of the marketing department. The marketing department? He smiled knowingly. That must be fulfilling. A few stifled chuckles spread through the crowd. In their eyes, my position was probably less than that of an ant at dinner. I was seated at the far end of a long table, next to Leon's cousin, a carefree, rich second generation. He kept refilling my wine glass, asking casually about my relationship history with Leon. To be honest, he leaned in, his breath reeking of alcohol. How did you win my sister over? I clicked his tongue and stood up from the floor. Juan, your husband is way too stingy. Who doesn't have a first love? You can't even talk about it. Seriously, the surrounding voices rose and fell like a swarm of flies, buzzing incessantly. Brother Tao, don't take one seriously. He's just a big-mouthed guy, no intentions. Yeah, if he's saying it, it must mean he doesn't care about what times have changed. Someone pretended to scold Juan as married now. You can't just make any joke anymore after being washed over by her friends' chatter. Xuan found it even harder to keep a straight face. They urged me to apologize quickly. Tao, don't let one person ruin the mood for everyone. Today's one's bachelor party. He's the host. What's wrong with him making a couple of jokes? No one forced you to come. She reached out to tug at my sleeve, lowering her voice in my ear. Hubby, if you're upset, take it out on me at home. Don't cause a scene in front of others, all right? I turned my head to look at Xuan. Just as I was about to speak, I was interrupted when he'd gotten up from the floor and naturally hooked his arm around Xuan's, their fingers interlocking tightly. Xuan stumbled from a collision, but she didn't let go of Wen's hand when, while playing with Xuan's hair, teased her with a smile. The two of them whispering to each other like a couple in a drama. Some people will be going home to kneel on the washing board. Xuan, as face flushed pink as she scolded playfully. Let go. She lightly pushed the person next to her. Xuan, you're pushing me. Wen's eyes suddenly turned red. Who was it back then who said that as long as I was the one to take the initiative, we'd be together for life? Xuan's gaze darkened, as if thinking of something. The hand that was about to push went away, instead gripped his hand tighter. One looked apologetically at me and said, Hubby, he's drunk. I was the one who said it back then. And now he's just divorced. It's inevitable for him to be in a bad mood. I didn't want to push him away when, however, laughter is tears and lay against Xuan's back. And do we really need to explain this? Xuan, how did you become so whiny after getting married? Let me check just how soft your ears are now. When bit down on Xuan's lobby, the woman's neck immediately flushed red. Her eyes rippled with emotions. He stood frozen for a long while. She sneered, breaking the sweet interaction between them. Xuan, how about we go get the divorce papers signed first, and then you two continue? Don't let your white moonlight become the third wall right after his divorce with that. I turned and walked away. Juan only then realized how far over the line she had gone earlier. She quickly released her hand from Wen's and chased after me out of the room. But after only 2 steps, someone rushed out from the room. Xuan, do you have any stomach medicine on you? Wen's old problem flared up again. The footsteps behind me paused, and then Xuan's anxious voice rang out. I've got it. When I stopped and turned around, Xuan had already followed that person back into the room. As I exited the elevator, I received a message from Xuan hubby. You're the only one who didn't drink today. How about you drive Wen to the hospital? I didn't respond. Xuan called me to own. Someone's life is at stake. Can you stop being emotional? Take Wen to the hospital first. As for the rest, do whatever you want. I'll accept it. There were other voices on the line. Yeah. Someone's life is at stake. Any grievances we can talk about later when S faces ashen. What if it's acute anorexia? What will we do then? Xuan's husband is really heartless. I ignored their moral coercion and hung up the phone directly, but Xuan chased me downstairs. As the car started, someone suddenly yanked the door open from the outside. Xuan, panting, still had Wen's bite marks on her ear. Juan is in a lot of pain. Leave the car here. We called a driver. They'll be here soon. I looked at Xuan with amusement. What did you say? Tao. I'm not joking with you. Saying this, she reached for my seat belt, trying to drag me out of the car. I spoke up. Xuan, all these years you've carried stomach medicine. It's for Wen, isn't it? Xuan froze mid-motion, then instinctively denied it. No. A dim light inside the car didn't hide the flash of guilt in her eyes. I smiled lightly, suddenly raising my voice. Don't touch me. Get lost. Not far away, Xuan's group of brothers were helping Wen out of the hotel lobby. Xuan, are you done? Wen is about to collapse. Xuan replied with a simple coming, and dragged me even harder, looking at the beads of sweat forming on Xuan's forehead as she anxiously rushed. I felt a sharp pain in my heart slap. The sharp sound of a slap echoed inside the car. Xuan's head was knocked sideways. She stared at me in disbelief with red eyes. I clicked into the chat window with an on in the quiet car. An ANS voice, thick with tears, came through. Daddy, when will you and Mommy come back? Han Shang is about to leave and I'm scared being here alone. After the voice message ended, I put the phone back in my bag. I raised my eyes and looked at Xuan. My voice cold. Do you want to stay and take care of your first love or come back with me to accompany our daughter? You decide. Tao, can you pick the right time for your tantrums? What first love? Wen and I are just friends. And besides, he's sick right now. Xuan's voice sounded annoyed. I sniffled, trying my best to control my emotions. I didn't want to argue with Xuan in front of others as a man. I knew very well what Wen wanted tonight. That's why I had been holding back earlier in the private room, but now I can no longer hold it, and the night air was cold and the wind chilled my heart bit by bit. I turned my head to look at Xuan, my anger flaring. None of my business. Ignoring her and still on the window, to yank the door shut, Xuan quickly pulled her hand back, startled by my sudden action. Bang! The car door slammed shut and locked. I pressed down the accelerator and the car merged into the traffic in the rearview mirror. I saw Xuan walking toward Wen, who was standing at the hotel entrance. He wiped my tears away, forcing a bitter smile. Before tonight, I had always thought that Xuan and I were each other's first love. Xuan had told me the same. I'm not someone who holds on to the idea of first love. I could accept that Xuan had a past, but I couldn't accept her lying to me. Even less could I accept her treating her first love as nothing more than a close male friend tonight. I gave her the chance to choose. I didn't even ask her to choose between me and Wen. I made her choose between Wen and our daughter. Yet she telephoned to truly see someone for who they are. It turns out it's that simple. All it takes is one question. When I got home, Aunt Chang was still there, accompanying Anna. She counted the small tomatoes on the balcony. As soon as An heard the door open, she immediately ran over to greet me. throwing herself into my arms and giving me a big hug. The complex emotions I had before opening the door were eased a little by my daughter's embrace in that moment. And An looked at the empty door outside, pouted and asked me, "Where's Mommy?" I picked An up. "Mommy has something to do and will be back later." And then seemed a little upset. "Then can Mommy still go with me to the flea market tomorrow to sell small tomatoes?" I didn't want An to be sad, and I didn't want her excitement to turn into disappointment. Although Xuan and I have always believed in being honest with An and her education, not deceiving or hiding things from her even though she's still a child. We've always given her the right to participate in family decisions and treated her as a complete individual. But now, I didn't know how to tell her about tonight's situation, so I tried to brush it off vaguely. "Wouldn't it be fine if Daddy went with you?" It seemed like An unsensed something in her eyes suddenly turned red. "All the other kids go with their moms and dads." I was seeing An trying to hold back her tears. I felt a pang of guilt. "All right, we'll go together." After hearing the answer she wanted, An kissed my face several times and cheered in my ear. "Oh yeah." After I got An to sleep, Aunt Jean prepared to leave before she left. She looked at me with a worried expression and asked, "How, did you two have a fight?" I smiled and shook my head. "Just a small thing. It's getting late. Let me take you downstairs." On the way downstairs, Aunt Shan kept trying to comfort me. She said that arguments between couples were common and the important thing was to sit down and communicate well. And there was a problem, Tao. Don't think just because I'm older and not trendy. I've been reading some CEO romance novels lately, and the misunderstandings between the main characters are always because one side refuses to communicate with the other out of pride. It can't be those fools who keep their mouths shut. I nodded and smiled. "Ma'am, I know." I called a car for Aunt Shang before getting in. She suddenly seemed to remember something and turned to remind me. "Tao, when I went to pick up An aunt from kindergarten today, it seemed like she was bullied by some classmates. She said there was a new student at the kindergarten who always takes her things. You should ask an ANS teacher about it. Don't let the kids make her feel wronged." After seeing Aunt Cheng leave, they sent a message to an ANS teacher to inquire about the situation. The teacher quickly replied. She said it was likely just a small squabble between the kids and she would mediate it when they returned to school on Monday. So I shouldn't worry. "All right. Thank you for your help," I replied. Then chatted a bit more with the teacher about an AN's recent behavior in kindergarten. The teacher praised An for being a well-behaved, unsensible child. Finally, she mentioned that she had a small favor to ask An's dad. "You should be in the parents' committee at Union Kindergarten, right? As you know, our kindergarten has a rule that teachers cannot be part of the committee. The father of a new student hasn't joined yet. How about I send you as we chat and you can help add him to the group?" "No problem," I replied. Soon, the teacher sent over a business card. I clicked on it to add the contact, but was immediately drawn to the parent's profile picture. It was of a succulent plant in a pot. Nothing special, just an ordinary plant, but strangely, this particular plant looked exactly like the one on my balcony. A sense of unease suddenly rose within me. I frowned and typed to message teacher. "I remember that Jingyin Kindergarten has very strict admission rules. Any child transferring mid-year must be recommended, right?" "Yes, that's the rule. After all, it's for the safety of the children." Anne's dad. "Is there a problem?" I just wanted to ask which parent recommended the little girl. Wen's daughter. After sending a message, I felt my hand tremble unconsciously as I held my phone. My heart seemed to drop. I turned off the screen, glancing at the pot of lush succulents on the balcony, the one Xuan had been nurturing for a long time, longer than the time she and I had known each other. A few seconds later, my phone screen lit up again when S daughter was recommended by an ANS mom. Didn't you know about this? The next morning I was awakened by the sound of the doorbell. I hadn't rested well the night before. Just before going to bed, I had sent a message to Juan reminding her not to forget about accompanying An to sell small tomatoes. The next day, despite my many grievances with Juan, As an ANS mother, I wouldn't let my emotions affect their mother-daughter activities. They didn't run an end to be disturbed by such trivial matters last night. Xuan seemed to be sulking after coming back. She didn't enter her room and instead slept on the sofa after the doorbell rang for a while. No one went to answer it. It was the weekend of Family Day and Aunt Shang had the day off. So I went to open the door. As soon as I opened it, I heard the sound of the door being opened from the living room, followed by an excited voice from a little girl. No. I furrowed my brows and walked towards the door. I saw Xuan holding a little girl in her arms, asking the people outside, "What are you doing here?" "Of course we're here to thank you for saving our lives last night. And one's daughter has been thinking about you, so we thought we'd bring her to visit you," the man said with a smile, teasing. "What? You're not welcoming us?" Xuan smiled. "Of course not. Come in, please." Xuan moved aside. I then saw one standing outside the door. One was dressed in a wine-red suit today. The white shirt inside was made of an extremely transparent fabric, with well-defined pectoral muscles faintly visible beneath it. His whole demeanor exuded an air of alluring charm. Such an attire was certainly unfit for a male best friend. It resembled more of a duck after entering. I found as he looked at the blanket on the sofa. "You didn't sleep on the sofa last night, did you?" Xuan awkwardly touched the back of her neck and smiled. "I came back too late and was afraid of waking On. When sneered, "Were you afraid of waking her, or is it that she didn't even leave the door open for you?" Xuan, let me tell you, your husband really needs a lesson. What woman is still living like you these days? Always getting kicked out to sleep on the sofa. Luckily, the relationship between us is clean and clear. If it were another man with ill intentions, wouldn't your husband kick you out to sleep on the street? This man really needs some training. Even after marriage, he needs to learn to be generous in social interactions. No one can avoid dealing with the opposite sex, right?" Xuan remained silent. Although I couldn't see her expression, her gradually straightened back told me she had taken it in. I chuckled softly and walked out from around the corner. Yes. One must learn to be generous. Not only do I need to learn to be generous, but my daughter also needs to learn it. Otherwise, if she finds out her mom is rushing to play the role of a mother to someone else, who knows what kind of mess it will turn into. Xuan's face stiffened. Her arms holding Wen's daughter froze abruptly, almost causing the child to fall. She turned her head, her expression unnatural. "Honey, can you not talk like that in front of a child?" "What do you mean by talking like that? Am I not being generous enough? Your first love's daughter comes over and calls you mom right away, and I didn't even say anything, right?" Psst. Xuan opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but I interrupted her. My tone remained calm. "You're right after all. Your Wen is divorced and one's daughter doesn't have a mother anymore. One needs a wife. The other needs a mother. You're happy to help and it's mutually beneficial. Very good. We should hurry up and finalize the paperwork so you could take over as soon as possible." I had already been very restrained in speaking in front of the child. Not cursing was already my limit. Wen's face immediately darkened. He took Wen's daughter from Zhuan's arms and told her to go play elsewhere. After Wen's daughter walked away, Wen glared at me. "Oh, you're a father too. How could you say such things in front of the child?" After speaking, he turned, his eyes reddening as he looked at Xuan. "Xuan, is your husband being a bit too much? Wen's daughter is so young. What does she understand? It's just a title. Why are you making such a big deal out of it?" Seeing Wen's eyes reddened, Xuan immediately panicked. When she looked at me, there was a hint of displeasure in her eyes. Tao apologized to Wen and his daughter. "What you just said was really too much." Upon hearing Xuan's words, Wen's face revealed a subtle satisfaction. Just as I was about to speak, Wen sniffed and called Wen's daughter over from the balcony. "Wen's daughter, has your daddy told you that you can't call your godmother mom? You can call her Aunt Xuan or godmother." "Never, Mom." Wen's daughter refused to accept it. "But godmother wants to be my mom. I want godmother to be my mom." When Wen heard his daughter say that Xuan was willing to be her mom, the joy on his face was hard to hide. but he still sternly reprimanded Wen's daughter. What's wrong with you? You're not listening to your dad anymore. Wen raised his voice when asked daughter's eyes immediately reddened and she pouted, ready to cry. Schwan, seeing this, immediately pulled Wen's daughter into her arms, comforting her with a tender embrace. All right, and don't cry. It's just a title. You can call her whatever you want, okay? After speaking, Schwan turned to comfort Wen Don T argue with the child. It's a small issue. She then turned to look at me. Tao, let's put this matter to rest. Arguing with a child is beneath you. Wen asked daughter hugged Zhuwan's neck and smiled widely. He had been planning a few kisses on Zhuwan's face, full of joy. Yay! Godmother is the best. Wen's daughter loves Godmother the most. She then turned and made faces at me, squinting her eyes. You bad uncle. Wen's daughter doesn't like you. My face remained calm. I don't like you either, bad little girl. Upon hearing me call her a bad little girl, Wen's daughter burst into tears. I chuckled, turned and walked toward the children's room. An was still in the room. I didn't want her to see her mother holding a classmate she didn't like, but as I turned, I found myself facing a little girl standing at the door of the children's room, holding a doll. Anne blinked her big eyes and asked in confusion, Daddy, why is Wen's daughter calling my mommy mom? Upon seeing Anne, Schwan immediately put Wen's daughter down. Wen looked somewhat displeased, but ultimately he wasn't in a position to see much. He just muttered under his breath, just as annoying as her father. Before taking Wen's daughter's hand and heading to the balcony, Schwan walked towards Anne. She bent down, wanted to hug Anne, but an unducked behind me. Mommy, I don't like Wen's daughter. She always bullies me at school. Can you make her leave? And Nan was a child with a very good temperament. Usually she wouldn't say such things, but Zhuan's face turned cold. And Anne, who taught you to talk like this? Was it your father? Anger instantly flared up in me. Zhuan, what do you mean? What do you mean I taught Nan to talk like this? Do you have any idea how Wen's daughter bullied Anna at school? She's only just started kindergarten and already knows how to form cliques. Less than a month after starting, she's instigating classmates not to play with Ann. Ann has a gentle personality. She's quite tolerant, but she's not stupid. She can sense the change in everyone. And of course she can sense her mother's favoritism. This was the first time I had lost my temper with Zhuan in front of her child. Ann hid behind me, reaching out to tug at the corner of my clothes. She whispered, Daddy, don't be angry. Being angry isn't good for you. I turned and smiled at her. Daddy's fine. Daddy just doesn't want Ann to be wrong. Zhuan rubbed her temples after hearing my words. She did indeed show a look of heartache. She reached out to take mine and Anna's hands, but we both refused. She sighed, looking at me with some dejection. Tao, I know you're upset, but Wen and his daughter are guests after all. Can we please wait until they've left to talk about whatever it is? It's just kids playing. There's no need to make things awkward for everyone. I was utterly disappointed last night. I had carefully considered Ed Shang's words to talk things through calmly if anything came up, but now I felt there was truly no need. Some grievances I could endure, but not when it came to my daughter. I coaxed Ann back to her room to get her pretend doll toy. After watching the door to the children's room close, I turned back to face Zhuan. Disappointment waste my voice. Zhuan, let's get a divorce. I'm serious. Zhuan looked at me in disbelief. Tao, what do you mean? She reached out to grab me. I stood firm. Divorce. You go be Wen's daughter's mother. And An doesn't need a mother who can't tell right from wrong. Seeing that I was resolute, Zhuan immediately softened her attitude. Her tone became gentler. All right, darling. You can't just say things like that. How can you talk about divorce so easily? Fine, I promise you, after today I'll keep my distance from Wen. Is that okay? No, I said, brushing Zhuan aside and turning to take Annan, who was holding a small basket. After Anon came out, Xuan took the hint and quickly changed the subject with a gentle smile. She picked Anon up. Then Mommy must run just know as compensation. How about Mommy takes you to the balcony to pick some cherry tomatoes? Anon still loved her mother, though her little mouth pouted in protest. She didn't refuse. Xuan smiled at me, mouthing, "Don't be mad." I ignored her and turned to my room to change. But as soon as I stepped into the bedroom, I heard an A&S cries from outside. My little tomatoes. Wen's daughter picked all the little tomatoes that an aunt had planted on the balcony. She pulled them up by the roots, threw them on the ground, and crushed them into pieces. The floor was covered in tomato juice. When an aunt saw her ruined tomatoes, she broke down and cried uncontrollably. She reached out and pushed Wen's daughter over. As Wen's daughter staggered back, she knocked over the pot of succulents on the balcony. The ceramic pot shattered on the ground. The flying shards also cut an A&S little hand. When I rushed over, Anon, feeling deeply wronged, threw herself into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably between gasps. She pointed at the ruined tomatoes on the balcony and said, "Fatty, Wen's daughter ruined my little tomatoes." Ooh, the tomatoes on the balcony had all been planted by Anon herself. She had prepared for this flea market for a long time. I gently patted an A&S back, accompanying her, but she was still very upset. "Daddy, I don't like Wen's daughter. Tell her to leave. I don't want her to come to our house." I held Anon in my arms and looked up at Xuan. Only then did I realize that Xuan hadn't even looked at Anon. With a stern face, her gaze was fixed on the shattered succulent pot on the floor. Wen, standing nearby, also looked at the succulent on the ground with a pained expression. Tears suddenly began to fall, dropping with a soft sound. He squatted down to pick up the pieces. "This pot of succulents was the one I gave you when I confessed to you. I never imagined that even after we broke up, you would still keep it. But now it's broken." "Xuan, does this mean?" Xuan reached out to stop Wen, her face full of heartache. "Don't pick it up. Be careful. You might get hurt." I couldn't help but laugh at the scene before me. It was only today that I learned the story behind this pot of succulents. Over the years, we've moved 3 times. Each time, Xuan would always bring this potted succulent with her. There was one time when the moving company's workers accidentally left it behind in Xuan. Upon finding out, went to retrieve it in the rain. I once asked her who gave her this potted succulent that it mattered so much to her. Xuan answered casually, "Just a friend. It's not that important. But after raising it for so many years, I've grown attached to it. I'd be ashamed to throw it away." Only today did I realize it wasn't that she was attached to the succulent. She couldn't let go of the person who gave it to her. As truly disgusting, Xuan was worried about when getting hurt, yet didn't notice that an A&S hand had been cut instead. She harshly scolded Anon. Anon apologized to Uncle Wen and his daughter, and sobbed as she explained to Xuan it was Wen's daughter who ruined my little tomatoes first. Those tomatoes were carefully grown by Dad and me for a long time. "Mom, I didn't do anything wrong, so why should I apologize?" Wen pulled Xuan, saying, "Forget it. We shouldn't have come today." He pretended to pick up Wen's daughter to leave. Xuan stopped him. Xuan shielded Wen and his daughter behind her, sternly interrupting an A&S crying and apologize. "I don't want to say it again." And unfroze in shock from the shout. Even her sobs were caught in her throat. She looked up, disbelief in her eyes as she stared at Xuan under the weight of her mother's authority, and nearly gave in. Just as her lips were about to move to apologize, I pulled Anon behind me. Xuan frowned at me. "You're not protecting her. You're pampering her. This will harm her." I sneered, raising my hand to slap Xuan across the face. "I'm pampering her. So why? I'll pamper her even more. I want an end to grow up in love so she won't be deceived by the smallest kindness like I was. So she won't end up with someone irresponsible like you." Xuan was stunned by the slap, frozen in praise, and immediately rushed to protect Xuan, shouting, How could you hit someone? If she won't apologize, fine. I didn't plan to argue with a child, but I'm not like you who only has women in your eyes." I sneered and raised my fist to punch him. The punch was hard and sudden. Knocking his face to the side, he covered his face. Staring at me in disbelief angrily, I said, "You won't argue? What qualifications do you have to argue? You keep saying you don't need women. What are you, some half-man, half-animal? You want my daughter to apologize to you. Who do you think you are? Do you even deserve that? There's a limit to being shameless. I've been holding back because I didn't want to cause a scene in front of Iman, but since you two are so shameless, reminiscing about the past in front of the child, I don't mind tearing the mask off and showing an on what disgusting people you really are." Xuan's expression cracked. In the end, she still cared about her image as a mother enough. "Cow, stop spouting nonsense in front of the child." Wen's daughter ran out from behind when Wen started hitting me. I pushed her aside without hesitation. Wen's daughter fell into a pile of tomato juice, her white princess dress covered in red stains. A pitiful sight. I looked down at her from above. "What an ugly child," Wen's daughter cried out loudly, even louder than before. I turned and picked up Anon, walking out without looking back and wiped her tears away in my arms, hugging my shoulder tightly. Her voice was still filled with grievance. "Daddy, can we not have mommy anymore, please?" I looked at the little tearful face in my arms. My heart clenched. How disappointed must a child be to voluntarily give up their mother? I gently wiped away the tears from her eyes and kissed her forehead. "Okay. We won't." That day, I still took Anon to the flea market after treating her hand injury. I drove her to the old house. Although the tomatoes were gone, there were plenty of unused items at the old house that we could sell at the flea market. These included the dolls and figurines that Xuan had given me when she was pursuing me. Anne was still a child. But when she met her friends at the flea market, she immediately became full of energy. Watching her energetically shouting with the other kids, I felt truly grateful. It turned out my daughter was much stronger than I had imagined. I ran into an old colleague at the market. He said he had divorced because his wife cheated. However, he lost the custody battle and now could only see his child on weekends. I asked him why he lost the case. "Sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, but I'm going through the same thing you did back then." As a fellow father, he said he understood my feelings and was willing to help. He told me that when he found out about his wife's affair, he only wanted a divorce and forgot to collect evidence. He filed the case with just a subpoena in court. His wife denied the affair and instead brought up his depression, claiming he wasn't in a stable mental state to care for their child. Plus, he had been a full-time dad with no steady income. In the end, the judge ruled that the child should stay with the mother. He wiped away a tear, holding my hand and saying through his clenched teeth, "Make sure you fight battles you can win." I squeezed his hand and nodded firmly, silently telling myself, "I'll make sure I fight battles I can win." After the market ended, Xuan arrived. She leaned against the black Maybach, holding my favorite bellflowers in her hands. The backseat door was wide open and a huge strawberry bear plush sat on the seat, along with a complete set of Elsa Princess Barbie dolls. These are the two anime characters that, and unlike the mouse, she had gone to make amends. "Honey, have you come, Dad?" "Anon, look what Mommy brought for you. Strawberry bear, Elsa Princess. Do you like them?" Anon gazed at the toys in the back seat, her eyes lighting up, but as soon as she heard Juan's voice, the smile on her face faded. "I don't want them." She then took my hand. "Daddy, let's go." Juan's enthusiasm was met with nothing. Seeing us about to leave, she immediately grabbed my hand, pouting and acting coquettously like when we were eating. "Honey, I really know I was wrong. Please forgive me just this once. For our daughter's sake, as an expression of my apology. I specially booked your favorite French restaurant tonight. You know their reservations are hard to get. Please don't be angry, okay?" I suddenly pulled my hand away from Xuan, whereas when Xuan waved her hand, "He has been sent away. My dear husband and precious daughter don't like him, so I'll never bring him around again." To show her sincerity, Xuan even made a vow, her face full of earnestness. "I, Xuan, swear that if I ever associate with one again, May heaven strike me down with lightning. May I die an untimely death. Hit by a car when I go out. Choke while eating, drown while drinking water. I couldn't help but laugh. Seeing me smile, Schwann's nervous expression eased a bit and she grinned. My husband still looks beautiful when he smiles. Promise me, don't be angry anymore, okay? I remained silent and Schwann took it as my silent approval. Don't he ever mention divorce again. You have no idea how scared I was this afternoon. I stared at Schwann's face and a bitter sense of irony rose in my heart. Time had not left many marks on her face, but beneath her skin, the soul had long been riddled with wounds. After getting in the car, I didn't sit in the front passenger seat as usual, but instead sat in the back with Anand. Schwann asked if I was still angry. I smiled and said, no. Schwann didn't press further and started the car. Inside the car, I buried my head in my phone. A new message popped up from the profile of Succulent Plant Tao. Did you notice the wrinkles on your wife's skirt? You're quite clever. You figured out my intentions the first time we met last night, but so what? Shh. Juan and I are well acquainted. We even slept together in the past. If I really want to fight you for her, do you think you can win? Brother, I advise you not to throw a tantrum like a little woman. Not only will that not win her heart, it'll make people annoyed. Then there was a picture, marks of kisses all over a man's neck here. As a little something for you, to your wife's masterpiece. She says you're boring and bad, only I and she are truly in sync. Finally, there was a laughing emoji with a hand covering a mouth. Hubby, what are you looking at laughing so happily? Suddenly, Xuan's voice came from the front. I looked up and met her gaze in the rearview mirror. My tone was gentle. Oh, nothing. Just chatting with some parents from the kindergarten. The green light came on. Juan turned her attention back to the road, resuming driving. I, on the other hand, saved a screen recording to keep evidence. After saving the recording, I sent Juan's declaration of loyalty from earlier at the market to Win. But I feel like you don't really know her that well either. The mistress after sending the message. My phone buzzed incessantly. I stared expressionlessly at the screen, which kept flashing new messages. Is this all it takes to break your defenses? With such fragile mental fortitude, do you want to play the role of the third party? What an idiot. After dinner, I had Xuan take a photo with me and Danon. Of course, Xuan was more than happy to oblige once the photo was taken. I immediately posted all my moments with a caption. 3 meals a day with you. Xuan was the first to like it. He probably thought I had completely forgiven her, but what she didn't know was that when I went to the bathroom halfway through, she nearly threw out my entire meal during dinner. There were several moments when I almost couldn't resist slapping steak right on her face. If it weren't for my goal of securing an ANS custody, I wouldn't have wanted to spend even a second with her. When I was coaxing Anand to sleep that night, the little girl looked at me with disapproval. She whispered in my ear, Daddy, are you love-brained? I couldn't help but laugh. I poked her mischievous little head with my finger. And made a dismissive tch sound. They say love brains have no good ending. Daddy, can you not be a love brain? Looking at my daughter's sincere expression, my heart warmed. This daughter of mine was worth every bit of love. In the following days, Swan stayed at home almost all the time. She began to cook for me, and Ananin did the housework just like before. Occasionally, she would find time to accompany us to watch movies. Various family activities were endless. It seemed like she was really trying to be a good wife and a good mother. If I hadn't seen the chat records when sent me, I would have truly believed she was turning over a new leaf. On the 3rd day after Juan returned to the family, when started sending me their chat records, Don T-Rush, wait until his suspicions have faded. Then I'll come out to be with you. I'll take you to that French restaurant. Show you the places I've taken him. How about that? He seems to be in a better mood lately. He is willing to go out to the movies with me. Looks like we'll be meeting soon. What did I tell you? Cal has a bad temper, but he still loves me. He has no parents, and when he proposed to me, he handed over the company to me and chose to step back to be a full-time dad if we get divorced. He'll have no one to rely on and he'll lose everything, both his wealth and his heart. Him mentioning divorce was just to scare me, to get my attention. I've seen through all his little tricks. What disgusted me the most was when suggesting that Xuan divorce me. Xuan responded like, when enough is enough. I can play with you, fool around with you, but I will never divorce. Staoan asked. Why? And honestly, I also wanted to know why she had already cheated. She could nurture a plant, with care, for 8 or 9 years. Without one around, she still carried the medicine he needed everywhere, so why didn't she want a horse? Xuan sent a comforting emoji. How has no family? His whole heart is in this home. He organized everything, keeping everything in order. Can you do that? When mockingly taunted me in Xuan's eyes, you're just a free housekeeper. The one she loves is me. I found it amusing we were both divorced, yet still believing in love. After seeing Xuan's reply, the last shred of affection I had for her vanished, so in her eyes, I was just a free housekeeper. So, this was the absurd end of love. After reading Wen's messages, I turned around and posted the heart-shaped trace balls one made today on my moments. There are many ways to break a person's defense, but punching cotton is the most effective soon. Xuan's phone rang. The ringtone was urgent. She grabbed her phone and went to the balcony through the glass door. I saw her anxiously comforting the person on the other end of the call this time. It seemed that no matter what, the fire on the other end could not be put out. The call was ruthlessly hung up. Xuan hurriedly opened a glass door. Hainan started putting on a jacket. She took off the hanger hubby. There's an urgent matter at the company. The project department can't handle it. I need to go over and check it out, really? I lazily lifted my eyelids. Xuan was anxious. She showed me the call history. The first record was labeled Secretary Zhang Xuan's secretary's last name was indeed Shan. Now would she believe it? It's really an emergency. I didn't expose her. I just smiled lightly at her. I didn't say I didn't believe you. Go ahead. Don't keep them waiting. Before I could finish my sentence, Xuan had already rushed out of the bedrooms. He quickly dialed Secretary Zhang's number. On T. Do anything silly. I'll come to find you now. He couldn't wait for me at home, okay? After watching the car leave the garage, I went to the children's room. I woke up Annan and then took her to a friend's house and stared at the 2 suitcases, looking confused. Daddy, where are we going? I patted her head before taking the final step. I still asked Annan seriously, Annan, if Daddy and Mommy get a divorce, who would you choose? Recently, Xuan had been very kind to Annan. Their mother-daughter relationship had improved a lot, and even started calling Xuan Mom, so I felt a little uneasy in my heart. An's eyes were red and she sniffled before looking up at me and asking, Mommy went to find Wen's dad, right? I didn't hide the truth or deceive her. I nodded, looking at Annan with a heart full of pain, but Annan, like a little grown-up, looked at me with concerns. He reached out and took my hand, speaking with determination. I will stay with Daddy, okay? I called my entrusted lawyer and a few close friends when the car pulled up to Wen's building. I indeed saw Xuan's car. My friends had already set up the recording equipment in advance. Perhaps even the heavens were on my side. As we were heading upstairs, we happened to run into the delivery boy heading to Wen's place. One of my friends grabbed the yellow paper bag from his hands, tearing it open violently. His small blue boxes fell out. The delivery boy blushed when he saw the items on the floor. Before he could react, I explained the situation to him. The delivery boy was a man of justice. He was furious for me and pounded his chest, making a promise. Don't worry, I'll make sure to get that door open for you. My brothers are nearby, and delivering is so dull for us. If you don't mind, I can bring them over to help. Of course I didn't mind. I couldn't wait to rip off Xuan's and Wen's faces and drop them in the dirt. Sure enough, Chinese people are always the first to enjoy a spectacle in no time. The hallway was packed with a group of delivery workers. They were all outraged. The delivery boy knocked on the door soon. A low, husky female voice came from inside. Coming, the door opened. Xuan's shoulders were exposed. Wrapped only in a towel, her neck was covered in hickeys. It looked like the foreplay was thorough. The moment she saw me, her whole body froze. Honey, why are you here? The response to Xuan was the countless cameras and my heavy slap. When did Secretary Zhang start living in Wen's house? Xuan, can you have no shame? You act like a devoted wife at home, but then turn around and go to your male best friend's house to cheat. How low can you be? Do you know what date is today? Today is an INS birthday. You forgot your own daughter's birthday, but remember to travel a long way to sleep with your boyfriend? You're not even human. Xuan tried to approach me. Hubby, let me explain. Before she could finish, the eager delivery guy pushed her away. Several delivery guys stood between Xuan and me, forming a yellow wall inside the room. When heard the noise in hoarsely girds from behind the doors, Xuan, what's with all this noise from just picking up a delivery? Come here quickly or we'll have to start over. I sneered and kicked open the bedroom door before Wen could react. I yanked the blanket off him. A friend was holding a camera, filming the chaotic man on the bed. Wen desperately covered his face. I grabbed his hair from behind and the pain forced him to release his hand from his face to protect his scalp when collapsed. Shouting for Xuan, he wanted her to save him, but Xuan had already had her bath towel ripped off by the delivery guys underneath. She wore nothing. Neighbors in the hallway heard the commotion of catching the male mistress and came out to watch. Xuan was a person who cared deeply about her dignity at that moment. She was naked and to preserve the last bit of her face. Crouched in the corner, clutching her head, she wouldn't budge an inch no matter how the people around her pushed or kicked her. Soon, Wen was also dragged out of the bedroom. The two of them, naked and desperate, crouched together in the corner. The heads in their hands, they looked as pathetic as dogs. Xuan. His parents rushed over as her father saw Xuan. He nearly choked. Xuan's mother, a divorce lawyer, understood all too well what the outcome would be in this situation. She cried and yelled at Xuan. Xuan, how could you be so foolish? Xuan couldn't face her parents. She kept her head down and remained silent. The matter eventually escalated to the police station inside. Xuan knelt on the ground, crying uncontrollably, begging me for forgiveness. She brought up Anan, saying that Anan couldn't live without a mother. I pulled out my phone and played a recording for her. Anan, if Daddy and Mommy get divorced, who would you choose? Mommy went to find Ren's dad. Right? I want to be with Daddy. Xuan looked up in disbelief. That's impossible. And Un said she forgave me yesterday. I sneered. Yeah, and Un was almost ready to forgive you. But what did you do? Xuan, there's one question I've always wanted to ask you. Xuan looked at me with red eyes. I said, if in the future Nun meets someone like you, what would you do? Those words seemed to be the last straw that broke Xuan. She lowered her head in shame, her voice trembling. Fine. I agreed to the divorce. Today we received the divorce certificate, and Un used her pocket money to buy me a bouquet of bell flowers. She smiled at me like a little adult and said, Daddy, I love you. Xuan rubbed her hands nervously, wanting to say something to Anan. But just as she was about to speak, Anan took my hand and led me down the stairs. One gathered her courage and called out to Anan. Anan, can you call me Mom once more? Anan stopped, turned around to look at her aunt. Xuan, Wen's daughter is your daughter. As soon as Anan finished speaking, Xuan nearly lost her balance. Neither Anan nor I made any move to help her. We quickly descended the stairs, got in the car, and drove off without looking back. After leaving the Civil Affairs Bureau that day, I never saw Xuan again. When I sent Anan to kindergarten, the teacher told me that Wen's daughter had been expelled. The incident that day had caused such a commotion that it quickly spread through the parents' committee. Everyone resisted allowing a student like Wen's daughter to enroll. So, the kindergarten ultimately decided to expel her. The teacher also said that Wen's daughter's biological mother came to handle the paperwork the day she was expelled. After completing the process, she forcibly carried her away and shoved her into a car. Not long after the car drove off, when arrived frantically searching for his child at the kindergarten upon learning that the child had been taken by her biological mother, when immediately ran after the car. However, after only a few steps, he was struck by a motorcycle that came out of nowhere. He didn't die, but was hospitalized because he had rushed out unexpectedly. The motorcycle driver only provided humanitarian aid and covered some of his medical expenses, but that was all. The rest of the expenses were his responsibility. Once his savings were exhausted, he started selling his house to cover the medical costs. After he ran out of money from selling the house, he began fundraising online. However, when people saw it was him, not only did they refuse to donate, but some even reported him. Within a few days, his fundraising page was forcibly shut down in the end. With no money left, he was thrown out of the hospital. He also tried to seek help from Juan and some of his so-called good brothers, but all of them turned him away. Some even went as far as to post his messages asking for loans in their moments to mock him. These were sent to me by some mutual friends who just wanted to gossip. After that, we never learned what happened to him. The next time I heard news about Xuan was her death. The events of that night, where she caught her partner cheating, had affected her deeply. From that day on, she began to avoid any contact with men. She had tried to start over, but as soon as people heard that her blind date was her, they immediately threw their coffee in her face and walked away. Her company also can contain the public outcry and investment started to pull out. When cash flow dried up, the factory couldn't pay the workers. They began to strike. The contracts they had signed couldn't be fulfilled. In breach of contract, fines and subpoenas came one after another. Employees started quitting in droves, jumping ship. Some creditors, in their attempts to collect debts, even printed out the humiliating photos of Xuan from that night and posted them on the company store. Before long, Xuan began to fear facing anyone walking down the street. She felt as though everyone was talking about her. She started to stay home, leaving all the mess for her parents to deal with. But during the divorce, I had nearly taken all the savings in real estate. All Xuan had left was a debt-ridden company. Her life was already in ruins, yet she seemed to have given up entirely, locking herself away every day, drinking to numb the days. This caused her parents to stop wanting to care for her, so the first people to discover Xuan had fallen from a building were not her parents, but sanitation workers. The sanitation workers cursed their bad luck when I heard this news. I was accompanying Anna as she watered the little tomatoes. The round of the flea market was about to begin and Anna still wanted to sell the little tomatoes. They stared up snestamate at the blooming tomatoes and "What are you thinking?" I snapped back to attention and pinched her rosy little face. I was thinking about how amazing my Anna is.